Okay, this is actually going to cover a couple of lessons at one time because everything is so related. We're going to be changing between percents and decimals and fractions, some of which you guys have already seen, and some of these numbers you've already seen on your perfect quiz. So our first section of notes is changing percents into fraction, and here we have a definition of percent. Percent is a ratio, and you guys remember ratios can be written three ways, one of which is a fraction, maybe like this. So a ratio whose denominator is 100. So this is a ratio, but not necessarily a percent, because a percent would have 100 on the bottom. And the second definition that I have underneath there, it's literally, it means per 100. The word century refers to 100 years. There are 100 cents in a dollar, and so on. So to change percents into fractions, we're going to write fractions with a denominator of 100. So for all of these, it doesn't matter what the number looks like to begin with. I'm going to start by putting 100 on the bottom. And then all I do is I take this number and put it directly on top and see if I can reduce. I can't reduce 51 over 100, so that one's done. I'm going to write 25 here. And I can reduce this. I can divide both the top and bottom by 25. And I will end up with 1/4. And on this one, I do have to write that 0.4, and then I need to convert this. I'm not supposed to have a decimal inside of a fraction. So if I'm going to move this decimal one time this way, I'm also going to move this decimal one time this way. So this will become 4 out of 1,000. And then I can reduce both of these, dividing by 4. So if I reduce both of these by 4, I will get 1 over 250. And my final one here, now 310%. This seems weird. We're so used to 100% being the highest you can get. And in a lot of cases, it is. If we're speaking about a test with no extra credit, the highest you could get would be 100%. But it is possible to have percents that are higher than 100. And so this is an example. I'm going to go ahead and just write that 310 right on the top. I know that I can cancel out zeros, so now I have the fraction 31 over 10, which is a perfectly acceptable answer. I could also go one step further by turning this into a mixed number. 10 goes into 31 3 times. 10 times 3 is 30, which means that I would have 1 left over. So that's turning percents into fractions. And so now we're going to go the other way, to go from fractions back to percents. I've put two different ways here that we can do this. The first way is to convert to a denominator of 100. So that will be easy for me to do here. I get from 20 to 100 by multiplying by 5. And I'll be able to get a denominator of 100 here by multiplying by 4. Now, this doesn't always work. And here's an example. There's nothing I can really do to get this to 100. So I'm going to have to use a different method for this one, and that's what this alternative is. We can always divide, which will give us a decimal answer, and then we'll convert it. So that's what we're going to end up doing down here. Before we do that, let's go ahead and finish these problems up here. If I multiplied by 5 on the bottom, I'm going to do the same on the top. 55 out of 100, which as a percent is 55%. And I had to multiply by 4 on the bottom. I'll multiply by 4 on the top. That will give me a 16. That is a 16%. Now on to this one. I'm going to have to do the division. 3 divided by 11. So 11 goes into 3 2 times, 22 with 8 left over. 11 goes into 80 7 times, 77 with 3 left over. 11 goes into 32 times. Uh-oh. I think we're going to have a problem here. I've already got back to 30, which is a number that I had earlier, which tells me that this is going to be a repeating decimal. So 3/11ths looks like it's going to be 0.27272727. Or in other words, I'm going to erase this last 2 that I found here and write my repeating bar over both of these numbers. So I haven't quite finished this yet because unfortunately now what I have is a decimal and I wanted a percent. So I do what I have learned to do in the past, and that is to move the decimal 2 times to the right. 1, 2. So my answer will be 27.27 repeating percent. Now on this page, we've got decimals changing into percents and percents changing into decimals. I put them on the same page because they're going to be pretty easy calculations. This is the one that we just did on the last page. Now 27 repeating looks like this. It's going to go on forever. So if we pick up that decimal and move twice, that's how we come up with 27.27 repeating. Decimals to percent, we move the decimal 2 times. This is 15%. Move the decimal 2 times. This is 135%. Move the decimal 2 times. This is 0.2%. And let's go ahead and see what this would look like. 0.4 repeating looks like this, goes on forever. Move the decimal 2 times. 1, 2. That's going to be 44.4 repeating percent. And this is actually one of our fraction decimal percents that we memorized for our perfect quiz. So to go the other way, from a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal 2 times in the other direction. So I don't see a decimal in this number, but every number does have a decimal. We just don't write it because we're lazy. But it is at the end of every number, unless it is already written. So 20%, I'm going to move 2 times to the left. My decimal is 0.2. Now, a lot of times students will write that 0 here. We don't need it. I can write as many zeros as I want after it, and it doesn't change the fact that I only have this 2/10. So we're not going to write any extra zeros. Move 2 times to the left. 1, 2. I'm going to have to add a 0 there. So 0.06. Move the decimal 2 times. 1, 2. 2.4. Move the decimal 2 times to the left. 1, 2. I'm going to have to add a couple of zeros. 0.003. And move the decimal 2 times. 1, 2. This is still 0.3 repeating. I only need to list that 1, 3. And our final concept for today is percent of a number. What is 25% of 36? Percent of a number, we're going to change the percent to a decimal, and then we're going to multiply. So 25%, 1, 2, that's 0.25. So I'm going to do 36 times 0.25. 70% of 70, I'm going to move the decimal 2 times, 0.7. I'm going to do 70 times 0.7. And 75%, move the decimal 2 times, that's 0.75. I'm going to do 80 times 0.75. So there's 3 calculations for you to finish here. And on this next page, please remember you can pause at any time to copy these down. I've got 3 problems that I would like you to try on your own. I'm going to get this first one set up for you as a model. Remember that the decimal is always at the end of the number if it's not written. I move the decimal 2 times to the left. That's going to give me 1.25. So my multiplication will be 1.25 times 30. Let me go back real quick and think about this question. This question says 125% of 30. Well, 125% is more than 100%. That means I'm going to be ending up with a number bigger than 30. So your answer here you should find is going to be an answer bigger than 30. Same thing here. Your answer will be bigger than 15. Your answer will be bigger than 20. This number invaders game, you will be shooting correct answers using percent of a number. The website is tinyurl.com/Carnes P of N, which stands for percent of a number.